Running out of money is people's number one concern going into retirement. And when you live with this constant concern or fear in the back of your head, it's almost impossible to actually enjoy that retirement. So in today's video, I'm going to walk through the actual likelihood that people will run out of money and the things that you can do to mitigate this risk. Hey everybody, I'm James Knoll, founder of Root Financial Partners, and I'm here to teach you what you need to know to create a secure retirement. So what's people's number one concern going into retirement? It's, am I going to be okay? Or in other words, am I going to run out of money? That is by far people's number one concern going into retirement. How likely is that though? Well, in today's episode, let's examine that. Let's examine the actual data around this and then walk through specific things that you can do to protect and to mitigate against that risk. But to start, let's look at this study. There was a study done by Michael Kitces, and in this study, he examined this. He looked at someone who had $1 million in their portfolio that was taking out 4% per year based upon the 4% rule. Now, what he did is he looked at every particular 30-year historical scenario going back all the way to the 1870s, assuming a 4% initial withdrawal rate that was then adjusted for inflation and using a standard 60-40 portfolio to do so. And what he found in the study is this, is the average person who started with $1 million in their portfolio and took out 4% per year over the last, call it 150 years of data, the average person was more likely to quintuple their money, so 5x their money, than they were to die with less than $1 million in their portfolio. So as you look at this, it is more likely that you will do significantly better with your portfolio throughout retirement than it is that you'll even start to chip into your principal. Well, why is this important? Well, toss aside the $1 million for a second. Whether you have $1 million or $5 million or 500,000 or whatever it is, the important thing about the study is that they were taking 4% per year out. So that 4% per year, the study is going to be the same regardless of how many actual dollars you're starting with. But I want to make a point, and that 4% is based upon the 4% rule that a lot of people look at. Well, when the research was done to create that 4% rule, you'll see that the methodology shows you why this makes sense, that you're more likely to end up with more money at the end of retirement than you are to actually run out. It's because that 4% rule is based upon looking at all these different time periods that you could retire to. And it's saying if you could retire, you don't know if you're going to retire into an incredibly good market or if you're going to retire into an incredibly poor market. So the basis of the study was to say, what's the most amount of money that you could potentially take out and be okay for 30 years, whether the market was up or down or anywhere in between. So what the study found is that 4% is kind of that maximum withdrawal rate that you could take to be okay in all market scenarios. The reality is that number is really closer to 4 to 10%, but it completely depends upon when do you retire. If you retire and the market goes on a 10, 15-year run of positive returns, well, you could, of course, afford to take out a lot more money. If you retire and you go into a horrible bear market, you have to start with a lower amount. So this 4% rule is kind of the lowest possible amount, or I should say it's the highest possible amount that you could take going into the worst possible scenario. So if you retire and it's not the worst possible scenario, you're probably going to actually end up passing away with more money than you went into retirement with. Now, I think that's a really important thing to note because number one, it eases some people's concerns. So there's this concern of, oh my gosh, can I afford to take this money out over time? And of course, there's a whole lot of variables around that. But number one, on average, if you're taking 4% and if you're invested the right way, you're more than likely going to be okay over time. Now, with that, sometimes it's not okay just to say, more than likely you're going to be okay. You want to say, how can I certainly be okay? Or how can I be as close to certain that I'm going to be okay over time? So let's walk through the particular steps that you can take, not just to have a high likelihood of being okay, but to really ensure that you're protecting against this risk of possibly running out of money in retirement. There's 3 things that you can do to mitigate the risk of running out of money in retirement. Number 1 is understanding your true expenses. Now this is a big one for a lot of people. So when you look at your portfolio, there's kind of a maximum threshold of income that portfolio can support for you over the course of your lifetime. This is why getting your expenses right and your approximate retirement budget correct or right, at least as close to right as possible, is so crucial because if you underproject your true retirement expenses, let's assume you think it's going to cost $50,000 per year to retire, but it ends up being more like $70,000 per year. Well, where's that excess income going to come from? It's going to come from your portfolio. And that excess income is going to drive up your portfolio withdrawal percentage. So as you look at the maximum threshold or the maximum capacity that your portfolio has to create an income for you to support you over retirement, if you under project your expenses and the expenses end up being higher than you thought they were, that means your withdrawal rate has to be higher than it can potentially be sustained for over the course of your retirement. So as you're looking at your retirement expenses, I've worked with someone who did this before, where they ran a projection. They said, here's our basic numbers for how much we think retirement's going to cost. And we said, great. Based upon that number, you have a portfolio that could sustain that money or could sustain that level of income over time. Then without really warning us, this client went out and retired and said, hey guys, by the way, it's actually costing me a significant amount more to retire than I thought it would. And what we had to do is have that hard conversation of the initial expense projection, very sustainable, but what you're actually spending is not sustainable. And there's going to need to be a change that you make in order to make this work. So one of the best possible things that you can do to prevent the risk of running out of money is have an accurate sense of what retirement's going to cost. This doesn't mean you need to go penny by penny of what you're actually spending, but have a realistic sense of what you want to do in retirement, and then maybe even add some buffer in. Add in some miscellaneous expenses. But the closer that you can get to an accurate projection, the more planning you can do to understand and see if your portfolio can potentially support that or if any adjustments need to be made. Number 2, the second thing that you can do to protect against the risk of running out of money is to have a withdrawal strategy that's tied to your investment strategy. What do I mean by that? Well, don't just say I'm going to withdraw 4% per year of my portfolio forever and call it a day. That's probably going to be okay in the sense that you probably won't run out of money over a 30-year retirement, assuming you're invested the right way. But you have to ask yourself the question of, are you leaving money on the table? If you've watched any of my videos or listened to any of my podcasts before, you know that I'm a fan of a guardrails approach. And the guardrails approach is designed to say, unlike the 4% rule, where it just chooses a static withdrawal rate and adjust it for inflation over time, the guardrails approach says, well, can we start with a higher level of income and then have a rules-based withdrawal strategy and have a rules-based investment strategy where if the investment portfolio is up a certain amount or down a certain amount, can we give ourselves raises or do we have to take cuts or where do we pull income from each year? And in doing so and having a more dynamic withdrawal strategy, what you can actually do is start taking out more money of your portfolio in that first year of retirement, and you can give yourself more substantial raises over time if you're willing to make the adjustments that are needed along the way. Why is this important? Well, that 4% rule, as I mentioned, is assuming you retire into the worst possible scenario that's going to be able to still support you for 30 years. Well, let's choose an arbitrary year. What if you retired in 1975 and you had a 30-year retirement? Well, had you retired in that year, with the benefit of hindsight, we can see that you could have actually spent around 7.5% of your portfolio as a starting amount and adjusting that for inflation. What does that mean? Well, that means if you have $1 million portfolio and you did the 4% withdrawal rule just because it's simple and that's all you knew, well, you could take $40,000 per year from your portfolio. Well, in retrospect, what we see is that you could have actually supported $75,000 per year of income from that portfolio, meaning you left about $35,000 per year on the table of income you could have used to enjoy more trips, to enjoy more time with family, to enjoy more fun, to give more, to do more. And as we look at that, that's also risk in retirement. So if you're starting with just a static withdrawal rate and then increasing it with inflation over time, you have to ask yourself, what are you leaving on the table? What's the opportunity cost of that? Not just the financial opportunity cost, but the lifestyle opportunity cost, the impact opportunity cost, the quality of life opportunity cost. So as we're looking at this, make sure that you're having a withdrawal strategy that's not just tied and pegged to one specific withdrawal rate, but that's more dynamic, that allows you to protect when times are bad so that you're not dipping into your portfolio principal, but also allows you to live more when times are good so that you're able to fully experience everything that your portfolio could possibly support for you. And then number 3, the third thing that you can do to protect against the risk of running out of money in retirement is having a plan for contingencies. And those contingencies are what are those possible big expenses, whether it's a death, whether it's a healthcare expense, whether it's a long-term care expense. What are some of these big one-off expenses that aren't factored into our everyday retirement budget? Because as we look at withdrawal rates, the goal is to say, how can we create a portfolio that supports this? Well, that's probably going to get you 90-95% of the way there until you factor in the what ifs. What if you have a major health event that requires significant assets and significant withdrawals from your portfolio? Well, your portfolio can't continue to sustain those normal withdrawals while also supporting these health events. Or what if you have a serious long-term care event? Can your portfolio continue to sustain those normal withdrawals and also pay for significant long-term care events? So as you look at this and you look at these contingencies, it's what are those big expense items that I won't say are unexpected because they could potentially happen, but they're unpredictable. We don't know the magnitude of those expenses, nor do we know the timing of those expenses. So can you look at things like, do you have the right health insurance or Medicare plan in place to cover as many expenses as possible so you don't have to worry about coming out of pocket as much? Can you have a plan for long-term care? Whether that plan is getting long-term care insurance, whether that plan is to utilize equity in a home, whether that plan is to self-fund long-term care through peeling off a portion of your portfolio to fund that in the future, having a plan to protect against that is crucial so that when those expenses happen, it's not a surprise and it's not caught you flat-footed and it's not cutting into the portfolio amount that you need to sustain your basic standard of living. So as you look at this, and by the way, taxes I would not include in that category. I know that taxes are going to be one of the biggest expenses in retirement, but people don't typically get taxed into running out of money. Taxes are typically going to impact you when you're taking larger withdrawals out or have a larger portfolio balance. So it's much more of a planning opportunity, and there's an opportunity there to save a tremendous amount, but that's not typically one of the things I'll have people concerned about. Are we going to get taxed so much that we run out of money? Well, you might get taxed a lot, but probably not to the extent that you're going to run out of money from doing so. That's more of an opportunity to do some serious tax planning, but it's these things like health events or long-term care events or a life event, where if that happens, it's not necessarily that you're getting taxed a lot, but you are having to withdraw significant sums from your portfolio. So having a plan for those one-off things in addition to the core standard of living that you want to be able to maintain is crucial, so that as you're planning your withdrawals, as you're planning where income is going to come from, you have a plan for those one-off things that could potentially derail a portfolio and cause you to run out of money. Now, the biggest thing to all of this is having a financial plan, having a financial strategy of where's income going to come from in retirement, having a withdrawal strategy that understands how's my portfolio invested to supplement some of those income sources like Social Security or pension. Understand how do you coordinate all that? How do you coordinate Social Security with investment income, with pension, with tax strategy, with anything else that comes along? So there's some serious financial benefits to this, but the biggest benefit is peace of mind. Because if you go into retirement, it doesn't matter how much money you have. If there's not a strategy, you're not going to feel peace of mind. You're not going to feel that sense of true wealth and well-being if there's still anxiety and stress about potentially running out of money. So by having a plan, having a strategy that addresses all these different concerns, yes, it's going to protect you financially, but more than anything, it's going to give you the peace of mind and security to truly be able to enjoy your retirement. So there's so many different moving pieces and components to this. Where do you even start? Well, check out the video above, where you can walk through the 5 most important parts of a successful financial plan. Thanks for watching. This is James Knoll with Root Financial Partners. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to share it with someone else who you think would benefit from this information. And also, please be sure to like and subscribe for more content just like this. Finally, if you'd like to see how we help clients create a secure retirement, be sure to check out our website at rootfinancialpartners.com.